Everybody, welcome back to another vector statics worked problem video. In this video, we're going to be doing another three-dimensional rigid body equilibrium problem. But in this problem, we're going to be focusing on the concept of taking a moment about an axis. So this is the problem set up here. There's basically a rigid body, which is depicted by this pink sort of L bracket, and it's supported by ball and socket joints at point A and C. So you can imagine being able to rotate this bar about the line connecting A and C. But in this case, the rigid body is also supported by a cable connecting at point D up to point E on the y-axis, a distance of h above point O. There's also an applied load of 210 pounds pulling downward at point G. And the question that we're trying to answer here is to figure out the amount of tension in this cable DE, but do it as a function of this unknown height h. Okay, so as with any rigid body equilibrium problem like this, the first step is really just to understand all of the forces at play and draw a corresponding free body diagram. In our case here, the obvious forces are the applied load here of 210 pounds. There's a tension along cable DE in the direction of the cable, and then there's also reaction forces at points A and C. So because this is a ball and socket joint, we can draw reaction forces like so. There's one that we'll call RAY, that's in the y direction. There's one that's RAZ in the z direction. And then of course there's one in the x direction, which we'll call RAX. And similarly at point C, we're going to have the same three reaction forces. Now typically at this point, we'd look at a free body diagram and kind of come up with a plan of attack, so to speak. We'd look at the number of unknowns and kind of figure out if we can isolate any variables or perhaps even eliminate some variables and use our 6 equations of equilibrium to solve all of the unknown forces. In this problem, however, you may have noticed that there's actually 7 unknown forces. You've got 3 unknown forces at each reaction, and then you have the unknown tension in the cable. Right, so just thinking about it briefly, let's suppose we were to take moments about point A, for instance. Well, that's helpful because that eliminates the 3 reaction forces at point A because all 3 of those forces pass through point A and therefore they don't produce any moment about point A. But you still got 4 additional forces that will in fact produce a moment about A. And you could say the same thing about taking moments about point C. So it seems like we've kind of run into a wall here. But this is really where the power of taking moments about an axis reveals itself. Okay, so what we're going to do is actually just draw a line connecting points A and C. So now we've got this line that we'll call line AC, and it basically is the line that passes through points A and C. The idea now is rather than taking moments about a single point, you're essentially taking moments about this entire line, which physically just means what are the forces that are going to contribute to moments that tend to want to rotate the rigid body around that line, or sometimes called an axis. Now, from a high level, you can kind of already see that we chose this axis very strategically, because looking at it now, it's clear that none of the 6 reaction forces at point A or C will contribute any moment about that axis. In fact, it would only be the 210-pound vertical applied load and the tension in cable DE that contribute to any rotation about the rigid body about line AC. Now, even though conceptually this may seem like it really simplifies the problem, mathematically there's still a little bit more work that needs to be done. So what we want to happen now is take all the moments about line AC and set those equal to 0, right? That's back to our physical interpretation of this. What are all the twisting forces about that line? And just add those up to 0 because again, this is in static equilibrium. And so here's kind of just the tricky-ish part about this problem is understanding how do we correlate this tension force DE and this applied 210-pound force into a moment about that particular axis. So the way to tackle this problem is really just to pick a point. Let's start at point A and recognize that the force TDE will certainly impart a moment about point A. That's just going to be the vector from A to D cross the force TDE, and that represents the moment of TDE about point A. And keep in mind that that's going to be just a vector quantity pointing normal to the plane of AD and DE. So it's just going to be pointing off into 3D space in some direction. But what's important here is that the projection of that moment vector onto the line AC is one of the moments about that axis AC. And physically what that represents is the amount of twisting force. I keep using this term twisting force to represent like a torque or a moment, but it's the amount of sort of twisting force or action due to force TDE about that specific axis. So it's the moment of force TDE about point A, which we can represent as R from A to D cross that force vector, right? So that's the moment of force TDE about point A. And then we want to project that vector onto line AC. And the way we do that, of course, is to take the dot product with the unit vector in that direction. So lambda AC dotted with the moment vector due to TDE about point A, that is one of the several moments about line AC that will have to sum to 0. Similarly, we have another moment due to the 210-pound force applied at point G. This 210-pound force is going to impart a moment about point A, which we can describe as the following. Right? So again, R from A to G cross the 210-pound force in the negative J direction. That is the moment of that force about point A. But again, we want to project that moment vector onto line AC. So we're just going to dot that again with the unit vector in the direction of AC. Now you might be thinking there's actually another force that imparts a moment about point A, and you'd be correct. The overall reaction force at point C, which we can just kind of arbitrarily denote as RC, well, that's another force acting at a distance away from point A. So we do have to add another moment here, R from A to C, crossed with the overall reaction force at point C. And again, that's going to be some moment vector that we need to dot with the unit vector lambda AC, which is along the axis AC. Now, these are all the moments about the axis AC, and again, these all need to sum to 0. But one of these three terms is actually going to be 0, and that's this one here. And the reason that we know this quantity has to equal 0 is because the overall resultant force of all of the reaction forces at point C is just some force vector RC that passes through point C. Which means that that reaction force is not going to impart any twisting action on the rigid body and attempt to rotate it about line AC, right? Again, that's what all of these moments represent, is the part of the moment vector that will contribute to rotation about line AC, and the reaction force at point C is just not going to contribute anything to that moment. Okay, so this equation now becomes the roadmap to solving this problem. A lot of these terms are just going to pull from the given geometry. For instance, lambda AC, well, that's just the unit vector along the line AC, which we know how to calculate. That's just the vector AD divided by its magnitude, which we can see is 8 feet in the I direction, minus 6 feet in the K direction, divided by the magnitude. Okay, so that's our unit vector there. We got our lambda AC. RAD is almost trivial. That's just the vector from A to D, which is 6 feet along the I direction. Okay, so we got our RAD. Our TDE, again, this is one of those vectors where we don't know the magnitude. It's one of the unknowns in the problem, so we're just going to take our lambda approach here. The vector TDE can be described as the magnitude TDE times the direction, lambda DE. And so we can figure out what this lambda vector is. That's pretty straightforward. That's just from the given geometry. Lambda DE is, again, just the vector DE divided by the magnitude. Same exact process that we used to find lambda AC. And so it's not quite as trivial, but we can still follow the same process and get to a result. Right? So it's minus 6 feet along the I direction, positive h feet in the j direction, and then another minus 6 feet in the k direction to get us back to point E. And then we're going to divide all this by the magnitude. Okay, so that takes care of our TDE vector. The 210-pound force vector is already known. That just leaves RAG. So RAG, pretty straightforward. There's no y component. It's just going to be 8 feet in the I direction, and we're going to subtract off 3 feet in the k direction. Like so. Okay, so we have the roadmap, which is the equation taking the moments about the line AC, and we've sorted out what all of our terms are. Now it's just a matter of carrying out the math. So you may have seen in your textbook or in your notes When you see this combination here of one vector dotted with the cross product of two more vectors, and it's called a mixed triple product, of course, because you're taking the product of three terms, but you're doing it in a mixed way, right? You've got a dot product as well as a cross product of three vectors here. Whoops, and I just realized that my lambdas here were not actually defined as vectors, which they should have been. It is important to remember, though, that the moment about an axis, like these ones up here, these are not vectors. These are actually scalar products. And you can see that here because we're taking the dot product of two vectors, which produces a scalar value. Okay, so nonetheless, we do need to carry out these two mixed triple products. And the easiest way to do this is to just take the 3x3 determinant approach. So in other words, one way to evaluate a mixed triple product is to take the determinant of the 3x3 vector comprised of these three vectors as rows. The first mixed triple product will be evaluated as a lambda AC in the first row is 4/5 or 0.8 in the I position, 0 in the J position, and minus 0.6 in the K position. The next row is RAD, which we have here. That's just 6 feet in the I direction, 0 everywhere else. And then the bottom row here is the vector TDE, which, as we found here, is the unknown magnitude TDE times the unit vector lambda DE. So it's a little bit messy here. What I'm going to do is actually create a new variable. I'm just going to call this entire square root term here, I'm just going to call that A, just to keep things simple. And so basically what we have is the vector TD is the magnitude TDE divided by A, so I can factor out that magnitude essentially, and I'll put that here. And what's left over is the stuff in the numerator here. So minus 6 feet in the I direction, H feet in the J direction, and minus 6 feet in the K direction. Okay, so evaluating this 3x3 determinant will give us the solution to the mixed triple product above, but just remember that we're summing two mixed triple products here. So there's another one that we have to add here, which is, again, lambda AC, and then RAG is the second row. So that's, we figured that out here. It's 8 feet in the I, 0 in the J, and then negative 3 feet in the K direction. And then, of course, our force, so minus 210 pounds in the J direction. So that's 0, minus 210, and 0. And all of this needs to sum to 0. And you can kind of already see, if you just look at the equation now, it's really, there's only two unknown variables. There's the unknown variable TDE, and then there's this variable H. But recall that the original question asked us to solve for that unknown tension as a function of H. So we were basically on the right track here. We've got everything we need. We just need to go ahead and carry out these determinant calculations. Okay, so looking at this first one here, considering the 0.8 term, we've got 2 zeros, so that term is going to basically annihilate. The 0 term up here is going to annihilate anything that it multiplies. So the only term that survives would be the minus 0.6 times the determinant of this 2x2 matrix times TDE over A, which gives us 6HTDE over A. And that's it. That's the only term that survives from this 3x3 determinant. From the second 3x3 determinant, okay, so one term will survive from the 0.8 term. That's 0.8 times, ooh, there's a lot of negatives in there, negative of negative 3 times negative 210, which is negative, one negative survives, and we get 630. And then the middle term is 0, it gives us nothing. The minus 0.6 term will survive, and that's going to give us minus 0.6 times the determinant of this 2x2 matrix, so 8 times negative 210, which is minus 1680. And all of this needs to equal 0. Okay, so we're getting pretty close here. Let's clean some of this up. All this just reduces to 504. And then if we go ahead and solve for our unknown variable TDE in terms of H, ultimately we just get the following. So TDE is going to be equal to 140 A over H. And then just recall that the variable A is all this stuff up here, which looks like it's equal to square root of H squared plus 36 plus 36, or 72. So we can make one last substitution here, 140 square root of H squared plus 72 all over H. Okay, so there you have it. We answered the question of finding the tension in that cable as a function of the unknown height h. You can do a little bit of a sanity check here also to make sure that this function makes sense. Let's just consider the extreme cases to make sure that our function actually seems valid. Let's consider the case when h approaches 0. Okay, so keep in mind that there's a 210-pound force pulling down on this sort of pink L bracket that's pinned at points A and C. If there were no cable here to counteract that force, this whole bracket would just rotate downward about axis AC. So it's the tension in this cable DE that's preventing this thing from rotating downward. And if the height h approaches 0, that basically just means you're stringing a cable from point D essentially to the origin at point O, which means that it has no vertical component of force to help counteract the downward rotation due to the force at point G. Okay, so what that means is as h approaches 0, then the tension itself would have to approach an infinitely high value to counteract that. So that kind of checks out. Okay, so that's just one way to sort of verify that our solution makes sense, is just to sort of test some extreme endpoints and see if the answer still makes sense, which in this case, it kind of still makes sense, which is a good thing. All right, well, that's going to do it for this one. If you have any questions about the process here in this problem, just drop them down below. We'll do our best to get back to as many as we can. And definitely be sure to browse some of the other videos that we have on the channel. Again, we've got approaching 650 videos now at this point on the channel, and these are all videos produced by our own faculty here in the Department of Mechanical Engineering for our students here. So if you're a student here at Cal Poly Pomona, these videos are basically designed to help you specifically with your classes, but also if you're watching from outside the university, these videos are also potentially really helpful for you as well. Okay, so thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing to our channel here at Cal Poly Pomona if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.